To understand the notion of Malaysia and Malaysian identity, one has to look at oneself. But this is an arduous thing. We are allowed to, but we aren't. We are not allowed to discuss the racist ills that divide our multicultural nation for fear of being charged for sedition, yet we are allowed to hurl racist vitriol between Muslims and non-Muslims. We are not allowed to show a man and a woman kiss on screen, but the explicit details of sodomy between a politician and his aide make lurid headlines. We live in a country where a man is allowed to marry a child he has raped, but a woman is unable to marry a Hindu because she is Muslim. We have become a nation ruled by crippling contradiction, where the absurd is permissible, where truths are dangerous, and where silence ruled for decades. A silence that came from fear, a fear that has now led to confusion. The very notion of what is Malaysian is now steeped in the mire of doubt, distrust, and deception. We have become wary of each other. We do not know who we are. The nation project has failed. As a writer and a poet, I have chosen to live in Malaysia, to use the country as my context. I have chosen to stay in a land that I love and hate, in a land that still continues to inspire me. It is a land that embraces me, yet treats me as an outsider, a pendatang. As a Malaysian of mixed heritage, I was a confused child. I did not fit in. I felt different. I spoke Cantonese to my Chinese grandmother, smatterings of Punjabi to my father's mother, and the English of Enid Blyton in my daydreams. People made fun of my name. I did not like who I was. In Malaysia, if you are Malay, you have to be Muslim. To be Malay entitles you to rights, unlike your Chinese, Indian, or Iban brethren. But what is Malay? The Malay race is a colonialist construct, born of the British to unite the natives. A Malay is Javanese, Achenese, Arab, Thai, Gujarati. A Malay is all of the above and more. He is a Bumiputra, a son of the soil. He inherits the earth. The Chinese and Indians do not. The earth is not ours. They tell us to go home, go back to China. If you don't like Malaysia, go back to India. And so the issues of race and identity rise above nationalism, nationhood. We are Indian first, Malaysian second. We are Malay first, and we want the nation all to ourselves. We do not celebrate our history. We do not celebrate our diversity. We do not remember where we have come from. We are a nation that suffers from historical amnesia. We have chosen to forget. So where do we write from? What are our points of view? What do we write about? I write to make sense of my country, of my anger, of my grief. Our stories matter. They are of Malaysia. They are Malaysian. I write because I have to. I write to discover who I am and to figure out pathways of who I have to become. I had to write myself into my country's narrative. I had to make myself belong. I chose to write about my mother and father, my illiterate grandmothers and grandfathers, ordinary Malaysians who lived and survived wars, ordinary Malaysians who were part of our landscape and history. In my memoir, Growing Up with Ghosts, I explore bloodlines, history, forbidden love. I trace memory, stories, curses. I remember my ancestors. I let them speak. I gave them voices. So writing became an act of will, of defiance, of memory. It was an act of faith. I had to write myself into my country and into the world. That's me. I'm going to stand now because I'm going to actually read excerpts from Growing Up with Ghosts. This was a book that I lived with for 23 years. It was a very, very painful book. It was a very difficult book to write. And ghosts are not literal ghosts, although I did see a ghost when I was a child after my father died. But the ghosts became metaphors because the stories haunted me for years. It's written in 6 voices, six narrators. and my central narrative ties the stories together. I also used a lot of the letters that my parents left behind, my father's love letters to my mother's scrapbook. My father traveled in Europe in the 60s. He was in Liverpool as a Colombo scholar. My mother studied in Melbourne. So I used their words as well. Okay, I'm just going to read 5 fragments from the book. I remember the day my father stopped singing. Just as he sang me to sleep, he sang me to wake. Wake up, my darling little girl, your papa is here. Your papa is here. In lilting tones and in different registers, he would sing to me throughout the day and into the night. In the quiet, windowless room of the blue wooden house in Pasir Puteh, and in the whiteness of the room in Taiping with sunflowers splashed orange and white curtains, and in the hard concrete room of Bapuji's house in Penang, where the window panes resembled patterns in my coloring book. The room that smelled of talcum powder and coconut oil, where he last put me to sleep and woke me that day, when we drove in the wide blue car with fins with the windows open. He sang to me while we drove past the Chinese mansions on McAllister Road and onto the winding road with trees that would take us to the beach on Batu Feringhi. He sang when he tickled my wriggling feet and splashed water on my open face, stinging my eyes. I heard him singing as I wandered up away from him to be toweled dry, my face turning and again to see him waving to me, his voice getting fainter and fainter. Don't worry, my darling little girl. Your papa is here. Your papa is here. And then the sea came up and swallowed my father. The sea slithered salt, water, and sand into his mouth and throat and lungs and his heart. The sea coiled its might around my father and silenced him. I was a child of 4, and my father never sang to me again. It's dated the 11th of December, 1941. This is my father's mother. We hear on the radio that the Japanese dropped bombs on Penang. We ran in the hills this morning to hide. I brought the children with me, along with my mother. We are very scared. They say that the Japanese come on bicycles and on foot with sharp guns that can stab and shoot. I'm very afraid. My husband is in Penang. I do not know if he's dead or alive. It is night now and I cannot sleep. Vaheguru, Vaheguru, please keep my husband alive. Night has overtaken, the children and I rise to walk. My mother's house is silent and cold. I walk outside and I see the moon. It is still shining and bright from its fullness. It is yellow like a thick curd, glowing like a single breast full of milk. I am still nursing my children. They still drink from me. I stand outside in the dark and the moon comforts me. Then I see something walking on the path towards the house. It walks alone. It carries no gun. It carries nothing. It walks straight on. The moon shines brighter and I see it fall on the curve of a turban. It is my husband. It is my husband. He has come home. This is my mother's mother, 1944. We have dug a hole with our bare hands. The Japanese are raping women and children. Yesterday, they cut off the heads of a few men who were caught stealing food. Then they stuck the heads on sticks near the market so that everyone could see. I saw 4 heads. Their eyes had been gouged out and there were crows pecking at the sockets. I felt like vomiting, but my stomach churned from pain. The Kempitai are getting close to the shop house. My husband tells me that we will have to hide for a while. Yesterday, we were all told to come to People's Park near the river. We have been digging all night. We will have to stay here for a while. Days, weeks, months, I don't know. There is nothing to eat at all. I tried to eat some tree bark yesterday. It tasted horrible. I was so sick, I threw up. But there was nothing inside me, just bright yellow bile. I hear screams all the time. Women are being raped, then beheaded. Their children are forced to watch. They are barbarians. heartless, animals. I hate the Japanese. I curse them from the depths of my soul. Many have already died. Maybe it will be my turn to die. This is my mother. This is taken in Melbourne. Jane Law, 1961. It is the first upside-down year since 1881, and millions starve in China due to Chairman Mao's failed policies in the Great Chinese Famine. The relatives in Fat San write often to ask for money, and the shophouse dwellers on 14 Leet Street do their best to save their family in China from starvation. Jane returns to Ipoh with a heavy heart, an acute sense of failure. She had disappointed her father, herself. This was the beginning of what she called the dark years. She feels alone in a house that is full of rowdy teenage siblings, a mother who is silent most times, and a father who is consumed with his pork-selling business. The only constant in the shophouse is the rediffusion, tuned to the Yutkok, or Chinese opera channel, day and night. Her mother loves the Cantonese opera from her home province of Guangdong and listens to the stories of Princess Changping and Legend of the Purple Hairpin again and again. Jane hums to the all-familiar strains from Princess Changping, which tells of two ill-fated royal lovers who drink poison as the Manchu troops arrive at the imperial gates. Tuk, 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 chiang. We will take the poison on our wedding night. Tuk, tuk, chiang. We can still preserve our names. Tuk, chiang. Are you sure? Tuk, 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 tuk. Yes, my love. We will die together. Chang, 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 chang. Her mother lies down on the planter's chair in the dark corridor, flanking the bedrooms, fanning herself silently above her heart, oblivious to the world. Those are my parents. I am Punjabi, a Sardani of the Khalsa, of the pure, from the tenets sprung from the loins of Guru Nanak, from the plains of the Punjab and the wheat fields of Amritsar. I am Chinese, from the port city of Canton, from Fat San, from Lam Soi Jie, from the village of fishermen and of joss stick makers. I had two childhoods, a childhood with my father and a childhood with my mother. This is a love story of how my parents found each other. This is a life story of how I found them and how I found myself. I grew up with ghosts. I grew up with the dead and the voices that resonate. I grew up with myth. I grew up with grief and its untold stories. In Ipoh, in the heart of the Kinta Valley, in the light of pre-war shophouses, cloth merchants, and food, of pigs, of slaughter, of tears. I grew up in Penang, in my grandfather Bapuji's house, of snakes and the Granth Sahib, of my grandfather's typewriter and his white turban. I speak from 5 voices, and I speak from my own. These are our stories. My great-grandmother was a witch. She reared snakes. They were white cobras. I was told this as a child. She used to worship the snakes in the village. She was a Naga worshipper. There was a famine in the Punjab, and many people died. Her husband died, and then her brothers died. Her sons were away in the army, and when they returned, she sent them away. She sent them away so they would not suffer the same fate. The villagers banished her. She was a curse, a bad omen. She left her village in Verka, close to Amritsar, and went to live in the caves, close to the border of Kashmir, and there she lived with her snakes. After my father died, I did not know what it meant to be Indian. I grew up Chinese, yearning to be Indian. Death created distance. Chapati, saag, dal, manji, bapuji nahi. Chapati, saag, dal, manji, bapuji nahi. Those were the only words I needed to know. Bapuji spoke English. He was a petition writer. My grandmother Manji stayed in the kitchen all the time. She made chai, lots of it. We were the half-breeds, the Chinese Punjabi pariahs of Cheeseman Road, Penang. We drank chai, and we felt Indian. My father's death evicted me from the world, and now I write myself back into it. Thank you.